My son's grades were declining because he was having trouble learning math. To solve this problem, we decided to hire a tutor. However, my mother-in-law disagreed. "Are you crazy?" she said angrily. "Why do you need me?" Taking into account her experience as a former teacher who devoted her whole life to education, it was decided that she would come and study with her grandson. My wife went to work early in the morning, and I had just returned from the night shift, so I was always with my mother-in-law. Following a familiar rhythm, we drank tea and talked before we started practicing with the child. I tried not to interfere and sat down in the next room to read a book. Indeed, my mother-in-law had successfully helped my son improve his math skills. However, this unexpectedly led to my own better understanding of the subject. My mother-in-law, a single woman living on her own for the past 9 years, maintains a remarkable appearance. She always looks neat and well-groomed and is meticulous about her appearance. Her physical attractiveness is unquestionable to me. Her figure is very appealing. I couldn't help but think about how she looks, so to speak, without clothes. It is quite natural when a man sees such a beautiful body. He gets into his head all sorts of bad thoughts. However, my mother-in-law did not notice my immodest admiration. And there was much to admire, especially her preference for blouses with a specific neckline, which emphasized the pendant hanging on a chain. I wanted to finger it. I can't admit to you how much I wanted it. It's a compulsive and intense desire. I tell you, it was like an infection of passion. Even I found it strange. Why? I didn't expect it of myself, even though I love women. Besides, in this area of my life, I'm fine. My wife suits me fine in bed. She's a smart girl, knows how to give pleasure. She knows the ins and outs, so to speak. And then I started thinking about my mother-in-law. I couldn't wait for her to finish her math class with my son. Nicole, as my mother-in-law was called, didn't leave right away, but only after an hour. We sat in the kitchen and chatted, a normal family relationship we have. I started thinking about how I could speed things up. To be honest, I was afraid. She's a strict woman. She was a teacher for a reason. You never know what she might do. And if she screamed or hit me in the face, I'd have to be careful. So I decided I would need a tutor before I went to college. Especially since my wife kept bugging me. "Why don't you take a correspondence course? You seem to have time, money too, and an extra diploma wouldn't hurt." Of course I wasn't going to enroll. I just pretended that I needed my mother-in-law's help. For example, to pull me up in math, because after school I forgot a lot of things. My mother-in-law praised me and made an appointment. By then, I was already thinking about being alone with her, and I wanted to compare who was better, my wife or my mother-in-law. I came with a notebook. My mother-in-law started to teach me, but I didn't listen to her. All my thoughts were about stroking her. Nicole, however, sensed my interest in her. She's frank and can't hide her hot temperament. "So, young man, tell me honestly, do you want to go to school or not? Maybe you want something else?" I hesitated, caught off guard by the direct question, and my mother-in-law smirked understandingly, as if testing me. "What do you think?" I asked, unable to take my eyes off her. Eventually, we came to an understanding that made my mother-in-law blush. It had been quite some time since she had been courted by a man. She may have even forgotten what it felt like, but I reminded her of it, prompting her to remember a lost skill. My mother-in-law didn't disappoint me, and I finally got everything I wanted and more. It was an obsession. I diligently visited Nicole 3 times a week, earning my wife's praise for being a devoted and responsible husband. Had she known what I was doing, she probably would have hit me over the head with a frying pan. As time went on, we spent it right with my mother-in-law. At home, I did not even come close to my mother-in-law. I sat and did not leave the next room while she was explaining math to my son. I knew I'd get mine. I got everything, on demand, everything I wanted. She turned out not to be a greedy mother-in-law. knew my preferences, and always sought to please. Our sessions were mutually beneficial. I remember I even made notes in my notebook to show my wife later, as proof that I was learning math and not just visiting her mother. I'm a cautious person. I had it all figured out. However, as the exam period approached, I had no intention of enrolling. My wife insisted that I spend more time with her mother, focus on learning math. My mother-in-law asked, "What do you propose to do in this situation?" After some thought, I replied that I would explain that there was no enrollment in the department I wanted this year, and we would spend the entire year preparing. My mother-in-law smiled and praised my resourcefulness. My wife understood nothing, believing everything. There was nothing to say about my mother-in-law. Our studies were almost continuous. We met 2 or 3 times a week, and most importantly, we didn't have to hide it. Take a notebook and a pencil and go to Nicole. It's an extraordinary stroke of luck to have a mother-in-law like her. Contrary to my expectations, she was not as strict as I imagined. The variety in the bedroom I liked. For one thing, my wife was showing more restraint. She was also showing laziness in bed. I understand her point of view, as I was always there for her when she needed me. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law was putting out her best as a teacher, not knowing if she would be able to apply her experience in the future. However, I reassured her by saying, "Don't worry, I won't forget the road to your house." We have many more interesting lessons ahead of us. Nicole couldn't believe her luck. Before we met, she thought she would never experience joy as a woman again. It's been almost 6 months since I started visiting my mother-in-law. She is preparing for my arrival, and I must note that Nicole has become even more beautiful. She grooms herself like a young girl. She gets manicures, goes jogging, and recently had a waxing session that left not a single hair on her legs and arms. Her skin looks fresher as she applies cosmetic masks daily. However, all of this is nice, but not of paramount importance to me. The true richness of my mother-in-law lies in other aspects. In this regard, she is undoubtedly a connoisseur, the possessor of a rich imagination. It is not just an occupation, but rather a dream